Hello, everybody. Today we are back in Skyrim for a chill little quest. Hopefully a relaxing walk through Skyrim's beautiful terrain. And I'm going to dismiss my companion, I think. I'd like to take this walk in solitude. I met Anek recently, after clearing out some bandits, I believe it was. And she was inspired by my adventuring, and it reminded her of her days as an adventurer, and she wanted to join me for a while. I spent the night here at the Moorside Inn, and I just like that little artwork there. And I'm in the town of Morthal. Oh, look at this. We've got a little Nirn root down here. A rare, potent alchemical ingredient, famous for its humming and its glow. It emits a musical hum, which is very interesting. At the end of the Third Era, the alchemist Sindarian discovered Nirnroot's potent alchemical applications, working, in fact, with the hero of Kvatch, that great hero who helped save all of Tamriel during the Oblivion Crisis. Sindarian was last seen descending into the Dwemer ruins of Blackreach in pursuit of a variety of Nirnroot with a crimson color. But today we are going to... could this be Maik the Liar? It is. Maik was soul-trapped once. Not very pleasant. You should think about that once in a while. Nord's armor has lots of fur. This sometimes makes Maik nervous. Some say Alduin is Akatosh. Some say Maik is a liar. Don't you believe either of those things? And those are all the words of wisdom Maik has for us. So, we're going to be walking to the great city of Solitude, which is perched atop the Great Arch, bordering the Sea of Ghosts. And we're going to be taking the most direct route, which circumvents, well, from Morthal, that is, where I began our little journey. And this road helps us avoid the dangerous marsh. Yeah, look at that. That whole expanse of saltwater marsh, which connects to the Karth River. I believe it's called, yes, the Karth River. And it is a saltwater marsh full of nasty creatures. Just kind of this barren, loathsome place. It's got trolls and frostbite spiders and even those horrible insectoid creatures called chorus that are favored as companions by the subterranean Falmer. And this is Fort Snowhawk, and it seems to be infested by necromancers and their undead servants. It's not really our business today, but I have the means to do it. We should clean up this fort, I think, before we continue on. Shouldn't be too hard. As the Dragonborn, I am quite well equipped to handle a few apprentice necromancers and their skeletal servants. But while I deal with these guys, let's talk about Morthal a bit more. Maybe I should have lingered there a bit more, and we could have looked around a bit. But Morthal is it's a little fishing village. It's the capital of the Hjalmarch hold in Skyrim. And it is perched on the Hjal River. So many of its residents spend their days fishing or working in supplementary industries. There is a lumber mill in town as well. The town is named for Morthal. Morthal is, of course, a famous hero from the days of Saint Alessia, back when humankind was enslaved by the Aliads. And Saint Alessia began her slave revolt, and she was aided by the gods. And the gods dispatched Pelinel Whitestrake, who is, of course, the famous divine crusader. And they also dispatched Morthal, who was a winged bullman. And if a bullman makes you think of a minotaur, you are not far off, because Morthal fell in love with Alessia, Saint Alessia. And the two of them were married, I believe. If they weren't married, they at least had an intimate relationship. And they fathered the Minotaurs. Morthal fathered the Minotaurs. Alessia mothered them, I suppose. And, you know what, let's not go inside. I think we've made our message clear. Whoever's inside the fort will come out and see all of their friends dispatched, and might just decide to pack up and move on their own. Though I suppose as necromancers, they're probably more likely to just revive their companions and carry on as they were. Well, if I hear that Fort Snowhawk is not reformed, I might have to return and take a look. There's our destination, the Great Arch over the Karth River. Perched on top of it, we can see the magnificent city of Solitude, capital of the Hafengar hold. The Blue Palace is off to the right there. It's probably, for my money, the most visually striking city in all of Skyrim. And it's not much of a contest. But what else can we say about Morthal? In recent days, there's a little dog on the road. See, it's running off into the woods. Come here, buddy. Where'd it get off to? There it is. Seems to have gone into that little cabin there. Miko's shack. Are you Miko, little buddy? Seems that we have a deceased Nord here in bed. Perhaps Miko's previous owner. Let's see. Here's a journal. Well, after all my years living in these woods, it looks like the rock joint will finally be the end of me. I guess that's fine. All my friends are long dead. The only one left is poor Miko. He was always a loyal companion, and I know he'll be able to take care of himself. I hope someday I'll see him again. Well, maybe we can provide a hand to little Miko, so he doesn't have to live alone anymore. He's clearly a very loyal buddy. What's wrong, boy? Do you want to come with me? Come on, you can follow me if you want. Let's see. This dog seems loyal and friendly enough. And who are we to turn away a poor animal in need when Cain sees fit to put one in our path? Well, looks like we've acquired a new friend today. But, yeah, I was chatting about Morthal. Morthal, what else is there to say about it? It's obviously, as you saw, not a very lavish town. Its current Jarl is Ingrad Ravencrone, who is a mystic woman. She receives visions and supernatural sights. Got a deer off to the left here. And one thing interesting about that, about Jarl Ingrad Ravencrone, is her name. Because her name, Ravencrone, well, I think I went the wrong way. I want to cross that bridge over there. Let's turn around. Ingrid Ravencrone, it makes me think of those witches out in the wilds of Skyrim. The hag ravens. And of course, if you take the name hag raven and you swap out hag for a synonym, which you could say crone instead of hag, then you would end up with crone raven. And then if you flip those words around, you end up with raven crone. So, hag raven, raven crone, very similar. Makes me wonder if perhaps the Jarl's visions are connected in some way to those witches. Perhaps one was an ancestor of hers, or there's some connection there. I don't know. The Jarl is not very popular among her people. Her leadership style is not much appreciated, and recently she has taken a Redguard wizard named Phalion into her court as her court wizard, and the people are very suspicious of the mage, would much rather have him gone. Yeah, Morthal has been sort of rocked in recent days by the burning down of a house, the house of Rogar, I believe. And Rogar's wife and daughter, Helgi, perished in the fire, and Rogar immediately moved in with Alva, another woman. We're crossing the Dragon Bridge, by the way. A landmark that leads us over the Karth River, which marks the border of Hoffingar and Hjalmarch. There's the Karth River down there, and Solitude off in the distance. So we are leaving Hjalmarch, and once we cross this bridge, we will be in Hoffingar, another hold. Oh, Skyrim is just such a beautiful land, isn't it? This town, by the way, is called Dragon Bridge, named, of course, for the the bridge that we're now crossing over. There's rumored to be a headless specter that rides over this bridge at night. I've never seen it myself. But that's the latest drama in Morthal. The subject of much gossip is whether or not Hrogar intentionally burned down his home because he was lusting after Alva. It would be a horrible crime if it were true. So horrible that I suspect some other foul work is at play. But others say that lust can make a man do crazy things, so who knows? We're walking down the path now to Solitude. We're closing in on the city proper. That path would take us up to this Daedric shrine. Here we have Dragon Bridge, of course, off to the right. And we're going to follow the path to Solitude. Up there on the cliff, we can see this shrine. I'm not sure which Daedric prince it belongs to. Is it Mephala, Namira? I don't know, but clearly somebody's been there, because there seems to be some beacon of light. A beacon of light. Ah, that would tell us which prince it is. For, of course, the Daedric prince. Oh dear, what is her name? She is sometimes called the Lightbringer, I believe. And she's opposed to the undead. What is her name? It's not Azura, it's not Namira, Mephala, it's a feminine Daedra. Oh, how foolish. I can't seem to recall. So much for being a scholar, as I like to say that I am. But here we are, closing in on Solitude. And I suppose now would be, oh, you know what, let's divert ourselves off to take a look at something relevant to our quest today. We'll pass Katla's farm and head down under the Great Arch to take a look at a little something in the harbor. We are coming to Solitude to acquire a book. The Great War. The Great War, which is a book by Justianus Quintius. And it is his account of the Great War between the Empire and the Aldmeri Dominion. A brutal conflict that resulted in the erstwhile imperial province Hammerfell becoming independent from the Empire, and Skyrim devolving into civil war between imperial loyalists and the Stormcloak rebels. But I wanted to take a look at this ship, the Kataraya, which is the vessel of His Imperial Majesty Emperor Titus Mede II. And he played a central role in the events of the book that we are going to read today. So, I just wanted to take a look at that because it's not often that the Emperor is in town. So I wanted to lay eyes on his ship for myself. But with that diversion out of the way, let's return up to Solitude. And, like a bolt of lightning, I suddenly remember the Daedric Prince is Meridia. That is the shrine of Meridia. Pardon me for my brain's slow processing and recall of that information. There's the windmill, one of Solitude's famous landmarks, which I believe powers the gates to the warehouse that we're currently walking by, used by the East Empire Trading Company. There's a great cave under the mountain there, and it is used as a storage warehouse by the company. And I believe the Solitude windmill powers the gate that allows for vessels to enter and exit the warehouse. But here we are, the final approach to Solitude. If we get lucky, we might see some Khajiit traders here, but nope. This is their normal camping spot. The Khajiit caravans that roam through Skyrim to do some trade. If you're lucky, you might catch them outside a city when you're visiting, but they come and go. And here we are, Solitude. This is where, of course, the High King resided before his murder by Ulfric Stormcloak, or his death in an honorable duel, depending on your perspective of how Ulfric acted in that scenario, whether he was adhering to Nord tradition or committing a shameful act of bloodshed. I'll leave that up for you to decide. Solitude is a beautiful city. Off there we had the execution stand where recently much blood has been shed as rebels are dragged here and have their heads chopped off. And let's walk up here because, I think at this point I should probably tell you how I plan to acquire this book, because it's going to be by somewhat unconventional means. You see, this book is quite rare, The Great War. It covers topics that many Imperials would rather forget about, and so it was not reprinted often. But a rare first edition. Hey Miko, why don't you stay out here? A rare first edition was recently acquired by General Tullius, the leader of the Imperial's war effort in Skyrim. General Tullius is a wise general and has an appreciation for such things as an academic treatise on the Great War, of course, that he participated in. Here we have his legate Ricca, and General Tullius himself, studying their war plans and the holdings of various Stormcloak and Imperial factions. And what am I doing? Okay, I'm going to slip back away because, of course, I need to sneak here. Because the way that I intend to acquire this book is by plucking it from General Tullius's quarters. You see, I know that he would not part with a tome like this for any amount of gold, so I'm not above a bit of sticky fingers when I need. Well, when there's no other way for me to get something. And besides, my collection is going to appreciate this book much more than General Tullius will. So somewhere in his chambers, he must have the Great War. 20 gold. I'm not a common thief. I won't take his gold from him. I just want his book. droplets. He keeps a very sparse chamber. Not surprising for a general like him, a man of hardships and few comforts. I'm sure he's been forged by his many campaigns to not rely on many creature comforts and luxuries of Fiori and Holger. Nope. Perhaps in this ended. Here we are. The Great War. I'll just take that. And let's go ahead and slip out of here. You know what? I think we've had enough eyes laid on us. Let's step out a side door and avoid further detection. Oop, don't mind me. Just crouching out of the building, nothing suspicious. And of course we'll be completely unnoticed as we drop down here. And let's get our buddy Miko. You're a barky little dog, aren't you? You just love to bark. Bark, bark, bark. Now let's go find a place in Solitude to read this bad boy. Here we have a shadow mark. Let's take a closer look. So this is a shadow mark. I'm versed in such things. It's a marking by the Thieves Guild. The Thieves Guild and their little messages that can alert members of their guild into things such as, offenses and dangerous spots and such. That symbol that we saw back there meant loot, meant there's good loot nearby. So, just marking the area off as a target for bold thieves. I think I have the perfect place to read this book. The Bard's College. The Bard's College, one of the great institutions of Solitude. Just here on our left, but first I think I'd like to take a closer look at the Blue Palace. This beautiful old palace here, eras old. Isn't it just gorgeous? The west wing of the Blue Palace is condemned, you might say, or nobody enters it. It's sort of fallen into a state of disrepair ever since the death of Emperor Pelagius III, the Mad King, who was the son, I believe, of the Wolf Queen, Potema. But here in the Bard's College, where people appreciate art and literature and music, we should be able to find a nice spot to settle down with his book, far away from the eyes of General Tullius and his guards. And we can read while enjoying the tones of lutes and flutes and other instruments being practiced by the aspiring bards here at the college. And these classrooms for seminars and lessons on instruments. Let's walk over here and see if we can find... This looks like a nice little corner. Let's settle down here with just some faint drum and pipe music off in the distance, and our good buddy Miko getting comfortable on the carpet. And let's go ahead and crack open the Great Great War. Here we go. A concise account of the Great War between the Empire and the Aldmeri Dominion by Legate Justianus Quintius. Author's note. Much of what is written in this book is pieced together from documents captured from the enemy during the war, interrogation of prisoners, and eyewitness accounts from surviving soldiers and imperial officers. I myself commanded the 10th Legion in Hammerfell and Cyrodiil until I was wounded in 175 during the assault on the imperial city. That said, the full truth of some events may never be known. I have done my best to fill in the gaps with educated conjectures based on my experience, as well as my hard-earned knowledge of the enemy. The Rise of the Thalmor. Although it is not well known, Somerset Isle suffered from the Oblivion Crisis as much as Cyrodiil did. The elves made war upon the Oblivion invaders, occasionally even crossing over to close down Oblivion gates. As a nation, they had more successes than Cyrodiil did, although the limitless Daedric hordes made the outcome a foregone conclusion. The Thalmor had always been a powerful faction within Somerset Isle, but had also always been a minority voice. During the crisis, the Crystal Tower was forced to give the Thalmor greater power and authority. Their efforts almost certainly saved Somerset Isle from being overrun. They capitalized on their success to seize total control in the Fourth Era 22. They renamed the nation Alinor, which harkens back to an earlier age before the ascendancy of man. Most people outside of the Aldmeri Dominion still call it Somerset Isle, either out of peevishness or ignorance. In Fourth Era 29, the government of Valenwood was overthrown by Thalmor collaborators, and a union with Alinor proclaimed. It appears that Thalmor agents had formed close ties to certain Bosmeri factions, even before the Oblivion Crisis. The Empire and its Bosmer allies, caught completely off guard, were quickly defeated by the much better prepared Altmer forces that invaded Valenwood on the heels of the coup. Thus was the Aldmeri Dominion reborn. Shortly afterward, the Aldmeri Dominion severed all contact with the Empire. For 70 years they were silent. Most scholars believe there was some sort of internal strife in Alinor, but very little is known of the factional struggles that went on inside the Dominion, while the Thalmor consolidated its power in Somerset and Valenwood. In 4E98, the two moons, Masser and Secunda, vanished. Within most of the Empire, this was viewed with trepidation and fear. And elsewhere, it was far worse. Culturally, the moons are much more influential to the Khajiit. After 2 years of the Void Nights, the moons returned. The Thalmor announced that they had restored the moons using previously unknown dawn magics. But it is unclear if they truly restored the moons, or just took advantage of foreknowledge that they would return. Regardless of the truth of the matter, the Khajiit credited the Thalmor as their saviors. Within 15 years, imperial influence and elsewhere had so diminished that the Empire was unable to respond effectively to the coup of 4E115, which dissolved the Elsewhere Confederacy and recreated the ancient kingdoms of Anaquina and Palatine as client states of the Aldmeri Dominion. Once more, the Empire failed to stop the advance of Thalmor power. When Titus Mede II ascended to the throne in 4E168, he inherited a weakened empire. The glory days of the Septims were a distant memory. Valenwood and elsewhere were gone, ceded to the Thalmor enemy. Blackmarsh had been lost to imperial rule since the aftermath of the Oblivion Crisis. Morrowind had never recovered fully from the eruption of Mount Vardenfell. Hammerfell was plagued by infighting between crowns and forebears. Only High Rock, Cyrodiil, and Skyrim remained prosperous and peaceful. Emperor Titus Mede had only a few short years to consolidate his rule before his leadership was put to the ultimate test. The war begins. On the 30th of Frostfall, 4E 171, the Aldmeri Dominion sent an ambassador to the Imperial City with a gift in a covered cart and an ultimatum for the new emperor. The long list of demands included staggering tributes, disbandment of the Blades, outlawing the worship of Talos, and ceding large sections of Hammerfell to the Dominion. Despite the warnings of his generals of the Empire's military weakness, Emperor Titus Mede II rejected the ultimatum. The Thalmor ambassador upended the cart, spilling over 100 heads on the floor, every Blades agent in Somerset and Valenwood. And so began the Great War which would consume the Empire and the Aldmeri Dominion for the next 5 years. Within days, Aldmeri armies invaded Hammerfell and Cyrodiil simultaneously. A strong force commanded by the Thalmor general Lord Nerafin attacked Cyrodiil from the south, marching out of hidden camps in northern Elsewhere and flanking the Imperial defenses along the Valenwood border. Leowyn soon fell to the invaders, while Breville was cut off and besieged. At the same time, an Aldmeri army under Lady Aranelea crossed into western Cyrodiil from Valenwood, bypassing Anvil and Kvatch and crossing into Hammerfell. Smaller Aldmeri forces landed along the southern coastline of Hammerfell. The disunited Red Guard forces offered only scattered resistance to the invaders, and much of the southern coastline was quickly overrun. The greatly outnumbered Imperial legions retreated across the Alakir Desert in the now famous March of Thirst. 4E 172 to 173. The Aldmeri advance into Cyrodiil. It appears now that the initial Aldmeri objective was in fact the conquest of Hammerfell, and that the invasion of Cyrodiil was intended only to pin down the Imperial legions while Hammerfell was overrun. However, the surprising initial success of Lord Nerafin's attack led the Thalmor to believe that the Empire was weaker than they had thought. The capture of the Imperial City itself and the complete overthrow of the Empire thus became their primary objective of the next 2 years. As we know, the Thalmor nearly achieved their objective. It was only because of our Emperor's determined leadership during the Empire's darkest hour that this disaster was averted. During 4E 172, the Aldmeri advanced deeper into Cyrodiil. Breville and Anvil both fell to the invaders. By the end of the year, Lord Nerafin had advanced to the very walls of the Imperial City. There were fierce naval clashes in Lake Romare and along the Niben as the Imperial forces attempted to hold the eastern bank. In Hammerfell, the Thalmor were content to consolidate their gains as they took control of the whole southern coastline, which was in fact their stated objective in the ultimatum delivered to the Emperor. Of the southern cities, only Hagath still held out. The survivors of the March of Thirst regrouped in northern Hammerfell, joined by reinforcements from High Rock. The year 4E 173 saw stiffening Imperial resistance in Cyrodiil, but the seemingly inexorable Aldmeri advance continued. Fresh legions from Skyrim bolstered the Emperor's main army in the Imperial City, but the Aldmeri forced the crossing of the Niben and began advancing in force up the eastern bank. By the end of the year, the Imperial City was surrounded on the 3 sides. Only the northern supply route to Bruma remained open. In Hammerfell, Imperial fortunes took a turn for the better. In early 4E 173, a forebear army from Sentinel broke the siege of Hagath, a crown city, leading to the reconciliation of the 2 factions. Despite this, Lady Aranelea's main army succeeded in crossing the Alakir Desert, and the Imperial legions under General Justianus met them outside Skaven in a bloody and indecisive clash. Justianus withdrew and left Aranelea in possession of Skaven, but the Aldmeri were too weakened to continue their advance. 4th Era 174. The Sack of the Imperial City. In 4E-174, the Thalmor leadership committed all available forces to the campaign in Cyrodiil, gambling on a decisive victory to end the war once and for all. During the spring, Aldmeri reinforcements gathered in southern Cyrodiil, and on 12th of Second Seed, they launched a massive assault on the Imperial city itself. One army drove north to completely surround the city, while Lord Narafin's main force attacked the walls from the south, east, and west. The Emperor's decision to fight his way out of the city rather than make a last stand was a bold one. No general dared advise him to abandon the capital, but Titus II was proven right in the end. When the 8th Legion fought a desperate and doomed rearguard action on the walls of the city, Titus II broke out of the city to the north with his main army, smashing through the surrounding Aldmeri forces and linking up with reinforcements marching south from Skyrim under General Jonna. Meanwhile, however, the capital fell to the invaders, and the infamous sack of the Imperial city began. The Imperial palace was burned, the White Gold Tower itself looted, and all manner of atrocities carried out by the vengeful elves on the innocent populace. In Hammerfell, General Justianus was preparing to drive the Aldmeri back from Skaven when he was ordered to march for Cyrodiil. Unwilling to abandon Hammerfell completely, he allowed a great number of, quote, invalids, end quote, to be discharged from the legions before they marched east. These veterans formed the core of the army that eventually drove Lady Arenalea's forces back across the Alakir late in 174, taking heavy losses on their retreat from harassing attacks by the Alakir warriors. 4th Era, 175. The Battle of the Red Ring. During the winter of 4E-174 to 175, the Thalmor seem to have believed that the war in Cyrodiil was all but over. They made several attempts to negotiate with Titus II. The Emperor encouraged them in their belief that he was preparing to surrender. Meanwhile, he gathered his forces to retake the Imperial city. In what is now known as the Battle of the Red Ring, a battle that will serve as a model for Imperial strategists for generations to come, Titus II divided his forces into three. One army, with the legions from Hammerfell under General Justianus, was hidden in the Colovian highlands near Coral. The Aldmeri were unaware that he was no longer in Hammerfell, possibly because the Imperial veterans Justianus had left behind led Lady Arenalea to believe that she still faced an Imperial army. The second army, largely of Nord legions under General Jonna, took a position near Cheydinhal. The main army was commanded by the Emperor himself and would undertake the main assault of the Imperial city from the north. On the 30th of Rain's Hand, the bloody Battle of the Red Ring began, as General Justianus swept down on the city from the west, while General Jonna's legionnaires drove south along the Red Ring Road. In a 2-day assault, Jonna's army crossed the Niben and advanced west, attempting to link up with Justianus's legion, and thus surround the Imperial city. Lord Narafin was taken by surprise by Justianus's assault, but Jonna's troops faced bitter resistance as the Aldmeri counterattacked from Berville and Skingrad. The heroic Nord legionnaires held firm, however, beating off the piecemeal Aldmeri attacks. By the 5th day of the battle, the Aldmeri army in the Imperial city was surrounded. Titus II led the assault from the north, personally capturing Lord Narafin. It is rumored the Emperor wielded the famed sword Goldbrand, although this has never been officially confirmed by the Imperial government. An attempt by the Aldmeri to break out of the city to the south was blocked by the unbreakable shield wall of General Jonna's battered legions. In the end, the main Aldmeri army in Cyrodiil was completely destroyed. The Emperor's decision to withdraw from the Imperial city in 4E-174 was bloodily vindicated. Lord Narafin was kept alive for 33 days, hanging from the White Gold Tower. It is not recorded where his body was buried, if it was buried at all. One source claims he was carried off by a winged Daedra on the 34th day. The White Gold Concordat and the end of the war. Although victorious, the Imperial armies were in no shape to continue the war. The entire remaining Imperial force was gathered in Cyrodiil, exhausted and decimated by the Battle of the Red Ring. Not a single legion had more than half its soldiers fit for duty. 2 legions had been effectively annihilated, not counting the loss of the 8th during the retreat from the Imperial city the previous year. Titus II knew that there would be no better time to negotiate peace, and late in 4E 175, the Empire and the Altmeri Dominion signed the White Gold Concordat, ending the Great War. The terms were harsh, but Titus II believed that it was necessary to secure peace and give the Empire a chance to regain its strength. The 2 most controversial terms of the Concordat were the banning of the worship of Talos and the cession of a large section of southern Hammerfell, most of what was already occupied by Altmeri forces. Critics have pointed out that the Concordat is almost identical to the ultimatum the Emperor rejected 5 years earlier. However, there is a great difference between agreeing to such terms under the mere threat of war and agreeing to them at the end of a long and destructive war. No part of the Empire would have accepted these terms in 4E 171, dictated by the Thalmor at Sword's Point. Titus II would have faced civil war. By 4E 175, most of the Empire welcomed peace at almost any price. Epilogue. Hammerfell fights on alone. Hammerfell, however, refused to accept the White Gold Concordat, being unwilling to concede defeat and the loss of so much of their territory. Titus II was forced to officially renounce Hammerfell as an imperial province in order to preserve the hard-won peace treaty. The Red Guards, understandably, looked on this as a betrayal. In this, the Thalmor certainly achieved one of their long-term goals by sowing lasting bitterness between Hammerfell and the Empire. In the end, the heroic Red Guards fought the Altmeri Dominion to a standstill, although the war lasted for 5 more years and left southern Hammerfell devastated. The Red Guards say that this proves that the White Gold Concordat was unnecessary, and that if Titus II had kept his nerve, the Altmeri could have been truly defeated by the combined forces of Hammerfell and the rest of the Empire. The truth of that assertion can, of course, never be known, but the Red Guards should not forget the great sacrifice of imperial blood, Breton, Nord, and Cyrodiilic, at the Battle of the Red Ring, that weakened the Dominion enough to allow the eventual Second Treaty of Stros M'Kai in 4E 180, and the withdrawal of Altmeri forces from Hammerfell. There can be no doubt that the current peace cannot last forever. The Thalmor take the long view, as is proved by the sequence of events leading up to the Great War. All those who value freedom over tyranny can only hope that before it is too late, Hammerfell and the Empire will be reconciled and stand united against the Thalmor threat. Otherwise, any hope to stem the tide of Thalmor rule over all of Tamriel is dimmed. And that was a concise account of the Great War between the Empire and the Altmeri Dominion, usually just called the Great War, written by Legate Justianus Quintius. A rare book in its own right. I am very happy to have an especially rare first edition now. Although, of course, it came at or by a somewhat criminal means, but I know that you can keep a secret, and you won't be telling any of the guards about how I got this book, will you? Well, my friend, until next time, I'm going to go find a warm bed in the Bard's College and relax my tired bones. And perhaps the next time I seek out a book from my collection, you can follow along with me then as well. Until then, my friend, goodbye, and take care.